In most prison movies, you see inmates crowded together in a yard, playing basketball, trading stories, or maybe getting into a scuffle in the cafeteria. But there is a silent, hidden world within the American justice system that looks absolutely nothing like that. It is a place where the clocks seem to tick differently, and the air feels heavier. This is the world of the maximum security specialized units, specifically designed for those facing the most ultimate sentence a state can give. For these individuals, life is not about rehabilitation or even long-term survival in the traditional sense. It is a meticulously controlled existence of extreme isolation. Today, we are pulling back the heavy steel curtain to see how life in a high-security unit for those on the final sentence differs from the daily grind of the general population. We are talking about 23 hours of isolation, a total lack of communal activity, and a psychological landscape that would break most people in a matter of days. To understand the difference, you first have to look at the general population or GP. In a standard prison environment, life is surprisingly loud and social. Inmates in GP usually live in dorms or cells with roommates. They walk to a central dining hall for meals. They have jobs in the prison laundry or kitchen, and they spend hours outside in the yard with hundreds of other people. There is a sense of community, however rough it might be. There are cliques, there are sports teams, and there is a constant flow of information. But once you move into the specialized high-security wings, all of that disappears. There are no roommates. There is no cafeteria. There is no yard in the way you imagine it. Everything that makes a human feel like they are part of a society is surgically removed. In these specialized units, the cell is your entire universe. We are talking about an 8 by 10 foot box of smooth concrete and steel. Unlike GP, where you might be out of your cell for 12 to 14 hours a day, an inmate on the high-security block is locked in for 23 hours. The 1 hour they do get out, it isn't to socialize. It's usually to go to a recreation cage. This is often just another concrete box, sometimes with an open roof covered in mesh, where they can walk in circles or do calisthenics alone. They don't see other inmates. They don't touch other humans. Their only physical contact for years might be the feeling of a guard's hands as they are being handcuffed through a slot in the door. This isolation creates a massive psychological divide between them and the general population. In GP, you are constantly managing your social standing and navigating the politics of the yard. In the high-security units, the battle is entirely internal. You are fighting against the void. Many inmates describe the experience as living in a tomb with the lights on. Because they spend so much time alone, their sense of time begins to distort. Without the anchors of a regular schedule, like walking to the mess hall or going to a job, days bleed into weeks, and weeks into years. Some inmates have lived this way for over 20 years while their appeals move through the court system. Let's talk about the food service, because this is one of the most immediate shocks to someone moving from GP to the specialized wing. In general population, mealtime is a social event. You sit at a table with your friends, you trade items, you talk. In the high-security unit, your food comes through a beanhole or a small slot in the heavy steel door. You eat alone, sitting on your bunk, or at a tiny concrete desk bolted to the wall. There is no choice, no trading, and no conversation. This solitary dining is one of the most dehumanizing aspects of the experience. It removes the ritual of sharing a meal, which is a fundamental human connection. Even the healthcare is different. In GP, if you get sick, you go to a sick call at the prison infirmary, often waiting in a line with other inmates. The medical staff often comes to you. Many exams happen through the bars of the door, or in a specially secured cage within the medical wing. The level of security theater involved in a simple checkup is immense. Every movement is a tactical operation involving multiple guards and heavy restraints. This creates a barrier between the patient and the provider that doesn't exist to the same degree in the general population. The legal library experience is also a world apart. For those on the final sentence, their legal case is their life. Their only hope of staying alive is a successful appeal. In GP, you might visit the law library to help a friend or to research a minor grievance. For those in the high-security units, they are often some of the most educated pro-se legal minds in the country. They spend 20 hours a day reading transcripts, studying precedents, and writing kites to their attorneys. However, they don't get to browse the shelves. They have to request specific books, which are delivered to their cells. They are intellectuals in a cage. mastering the complexities of the law while being denied the most basic human freedoms. One of the most profound differences is the soundscape. General population is noisy shouting, heavy metal doors slamming, the hum of hundreds of voices, the sound of a basketball hitting the pavement. High security wings have a different kind of noise. It is often a pressurized silence, broken only by the occasional clack-clack of a guard's boots on the tier or the rattling of handcuffs. When someone does start shouting, it echoes with a haunting intensity. There is no background noise to drown out the reality of your situation. This silence can become so heavy that inmates have reported hearing their own heartbeat or the sound of the blood rushing through their ears. Let's talk about personal property. In GP, you can often accumulate quite a bit of stuff. A television, a radio, a fan, books, and various items from the commissary. In the specialized units, property is strictly limited. The number of books you can have at one time is capped. Even your clothing might be different. In many states, inmates on the final sentence wear a specific color, often bright orange or red, to distinguish them from the blue-clad general population. This color coding is a constant reminder of their status, a visible label that says this person is different. The visitation process is where the emotional divide becomes truly heart-wrenching. In many GP facilities, you can eventually earn contact visits where you can sit at a table with your family, hold your child's hand, or even give your spouse a brief hug. For those in the high-security unit, contact is almost never allowed. Visits happen behind thick, shatterproof glass. You talk through a phone or a metal grate. You can see your loved ones, but you can never touch them. Imagine seeing your child grow up over 20 years and never once being able to hold their hand. This separation through glass is one of the hardest things for these inmates to endure, and it is a level of punishment that GP inmates rarely have to face permanently. Now consider the staff interaction. In general population, guards often develop a working relationship with inmates. There is a bit of give and take to keep the unit running smoothly. In the high-security wings, the relationship is much more formal and distant. Every time an inmate's door is opened, a protocol is triggered. It is a world of standard operating procedures where everything is filmed and documented. There is very little room for human rapport. The guards in these units are specifically trained to remain detached, partly as a security measure, and partly because of the weight of the work they do. The career and education opportunities are also nearly non-existent in the specialized units. In GP, you can work toward a GED, take vocational classes in carpentry or welding, or even earn a college degree in a classroom setting. In the high-security block, education is usually a packet of papers delivered to your door. There are no vocational shops, no jobs to go to. Your only job is to wait. This lack of productive activity leads to a mental atrophy that is difficult to combat. Without a way to contribute or build, the sense of self-worth can plummet, making the psychological battle even harder. One of the unspoken differences is the status and hierarchy. Power is often about physical strength, gang affiliation, or business savvy. Those things matter less because everyone is isolated. Status is often based on how you carry yourself in the face of the final sentence. There is a strange, dark respect for those who remain calm, respectful, and stoic. Those who lose it and become violent or erratic are looked down upon. Not because they are a threat, everyone is behind a door, but because they have let the unit win. Religious life is another area of significant difference. In GP, inmates go to services in a chapel sitting together to pray or sing. In the specialized units, a chaplain might walk the row talking to inmates through the bars. Some facilities have closet-sized prayer rooms, where an inmate can be brought individually. But for the most part, faith is a private, solitary practice. There is no choir, no communal worship. It is a deeply personal, often intense relationship with their creator that happens entirely within the confines of those four concrete walls. Let's talk about the architecture of control. General population prisons are designed to move large groups of people. High-security units are designed to isolate and contain individuals. Everything is remote-controlled. Doors are open from a central bubble or control room. You don't see the person opening your door. This mechanization of your environment adds to the feeling of being an object rather than a person. In GP, you see the guard's hand on the key in the specialized unit. The world just mechanically clicks around you. The commissary experience is also different. While GP inmates might walk to a store window to pick up their items and carry them back in a bag, The high-security inmates order from a list. The items are then bagged and tagged by other inmates from GP and delivered to the cell by guards. The anticipation of delivery is one of the few highlights of the week. But again, it is a contactless transaction. The storeman of the high-security wing isn't a person you can haggle with. It's a form you fill out on Tuesday. One of the most interesting scientific observations about these units is the biological impact of lack of sunlight. In GP, you spend hours in the sun. In many high-security units, the recreation cages provide very little direct UV exposure. This can lead to severe vitamin D deficiencies, which affect mood and long-term health. Some inmates develop a prison pallor, an almost translucent skin tone from years spent under industrial fluorescent lights. They are living in a world of artificial noon, 24 hours a day. Then there is the end-of-the-road factor. In general population, everyone has a release date, or at least the hope of one. Even those with life often have a chance at parole in 30 years. On the high-security block, there is no out date. There is only a legal date. This creates a terminal environment. Every conversation, every book read, and every letter written is done under the shadow of the knowledge that this is the final stop. This creates a gravity to life that is impossible to explain to someone in the free world or even someone in GP. Let's look at the maintenance of the cell. You might have to keep your area clean for inspections, but there's a bit of lived-in mess. In the specialized units, cleanliness is often an obsession, because it is the only thing they can control. Many inmates spend hours scrubbing their concrete floors with tiny brushes or organizing their 4 books in perfect alignment. It is a form of external order to combat internal chaos. A messy cell is often seen as a sign that an inmate is slipping mentally. Communication with the outside is also more restricted. While GP inmates have access to banks of phones in the day room, high-security inmates usually have a rolling phone brought to their door. They may only get 1 or 2 15-minute calls a week. Because of the security risk, these calls are often more heavily monitored and even recorded for intelligence purposes. There is no privacy in these units, not even the privacy of a whispered conversation with a sister or a mother. Wait, what about recreation? In GP, you have weight piles, handball courts, and sometimes even hobby shops. Rechet is often a solitary affair. Some inmates have figured out how to do burpees in an area the size of a yoga mat, or use tension exercises to stay in shape. But there is no game. There is no competition. You are essentially training for nothing. This lack of physical outlet is one of the primary drivers of the anxiety and restlessness that plagues high-security blocks. The staffing of these units is also unique. It takes a specific kind of guard to work on these units. It is a high-stress, low-interaction job. Many guards actually prefer it because it is predictable, but it takes a toll. The secondhand trauma of watching people live in such extreme conditions for decades is a real issue. This leads to an even more clinical and sterile atmosphere. The guard doesn't want to know your name, and you don't want to know theirs. It is a professional standoff that lasts for years. In GP, Mail Day is a social event where the tier tender passes out envelopes and people sit on their bunks to read. In the specialized unit, mail is often screened with even greater scrutiny. Sometimes, they don't get the original letter. They get a photocopy to ensure no chemicals or contraband are hidden in the paper or the ink. This sanitized communication is another layer of separation from the real world. A letter that has been through a high-speed scanner and a photocopy machine lacks the physical connection of a handwritten note. Let's talk about sleep. In general population, the dorms are never truly quiet, and the lights are usually dimmed but not off. In the high-security units, the lights-out policy can be unpredictable. Some facilities keep the tier lights on 24 hours a day for security reasons. This constant illumination can wreak havoc on an inmate's circadian rhythm, leading to chronic insomnia and mental fatigue. You are never truly in the dark, both literally and figuratively. The smell of a high-security unit is also different from GP. In general population, you smell sweat, state-issued floor wax, and the constant odor of prison cooking. High-security units often have a clinical smell, strong bleach, industrial air fresheners, and a kind of stale, recycled air feeling. There are no natural smells, no grass, no rain, no fresh breeze. It is a chemically maintained environment. Wait, can they have hobbies? You can join a band, paint in a communal studio, Or participate in a drama club. In the specialized wing, your hobby is whatever you can do with a pencil and paper. Some inmates have become incredible poets or writers. Others draw intricate patterns on their commissary bags. But there is no display. There is no art show. Your work is seen only by the guards and the occasional lawyer. It is art for an audience of one. One of the unspoken rituals is the shakedown. A shakedown is a hassle where they toss your locker and look for shanks. In the high-security block, it is a surgical strike. An extraction team might be used to remove the inmate from the cell, and every millimeter of that room is inspected with high-tech tools. Because there is so little property, anything different, even a folded piece of paper in the wrong place, is suspicious. It is a level of purity that is impossible to maintain in the chaos of a general population unit. The legal visits are also a high-security event. In GP, you might meet your lawyer in a large room with other inmates. In the specialized unit, you are brought to a booth in a high-security wing. You are caged on one side, and your lawyer is on the other. You have to slide papers through a tiny slot. This adversarial architecture makes it feel like you are being defended from a distance, even by your own legal team. Let's look at aging. People in GP age faster than people in the free world due to the stress and poor diet. But people in the high-security units age in a strange, preserved way, because they are so protected from interpersonal violence and infectious disease found in the GP crowd. They often don't have the scars and injuries of other inmates. However, the brain ages differently. The lack of complex social interaction and varied stimuli leads to a kind of cognitive decline that researchers compare to early-onset dementia. Their bodies are preserved, but their minds are fading. The grapevine or inmate telegram still exists in high security, but it's slower. In GP, a rumor moves across the yard in 10 minutes. In the specialized unit, news is passed through the plumbing, literally. By bailing out the water in their toilets, inmates can use the pipes as sounding tubes to talk to the person in the cell above or below them. This is how they share news about court rulings, tier moves, or what's for lunch. It is a low-tech communication system that would be unnecessary in the loud, social world of the general population. What about clothing? You can sometimes have your own personal sneakers or a specific type of sweatshirt. In the specialized units, everything is state-issued. You wear a paper-thin orange jumpsuit and Velcro shoes. There are no laces, no buttons, no zippers. Anything that could be repurposed as a tool or a weapon is removed. You are dressed by the state to be as harmless and visible as possible. The education packets I mentioned earlier are often censored as well. Books on martial arts, electronics, or advanced chemistry are strictly forbidden. In GP, you might get away with a questionable magazine. But in the specialized unit, the screening is absolute. They don't want you learning how to build or fight, even in a theoretical sense. Your intellectual diet is as controlled as your physical one. One of the most surreal experiences for these inmates is the news. They watch TV if they are allowed one, and see a world that is moving at light speed. They see smartphones, AI, and TikTok, none of which existed when many of them were first incarcerated. In GP, you might have a hand-me-down smartphone or at least see more modern tech in the hands of staff. In the high-security unit, the world on the screen feels like science fiction. They are temporal orphans stuck in the year they were sentenced while the rest of the world moves on. The paving of the yard. In GP, you might have a dirt or grass yard. In high-security units, the rec area is almost always concrete or asphalt. There is no living earth to touch. Some inmates have described tearing up when they see a dandelion growing in a crack in the concrete during their 1 hour of outside time. This severance from nature is a psychological weight that GP inmates, who might work on a prison farm or a road crew, don't have to carry. The escort procedure is perhaps the most visible difference. If an inmate from the general population needs to go to the dentist, they might walk with one guard or even in a chain gang. When a high-security inmate moves, it's a production. Generally, it involves at least 2 guards, often a supervisor and a video camera operator. The inmate is in full restraints, handcuffs, 1, belly chain, and shackles. This 3-point restraint makes walking a clumsy, painful process. This physical humiliation of every single movement is a core part of the high-security experience. Wait, do they have friends? In GP, you have partners and associates. You have neighbors. You may know the person in the cell next to you for 10 years without ever seeing their face clearly. You know their voice, their cough, and their history. But they are a ghost in the machine. This intimate distance is a strange social dynamic that only exists in these specialized units. You are alone together in a way that is hard for a GP inmate to comprehend. The parole hearings are also a farce for many on these units. While a GP inmate spends years building a packet to show they are rehabilitated, an inmate on the final sentence is fighting for more time to appeal. The goal isn't parole, it's commutation or exoneration. This changes the vibe of every interaction with a rehabilitation officer. There is no rehab on these units. There is only management. Let's look at the psychological testing. Inmates on the high-security block are tested more frequently than GP, because the state is responsible for their mental health during the long appeals process. They are visited by psych techs who ask standardized questions through the door. Are you hearing voices? Do you want to hurt yourself? These doorway assessments are often performative. The inmate says no, so they don't get moved to a suicide watch cell, which is even smaller and colder, and the tech moves on. It is a veneer of care in an environment that is designed to be the opposite. One of the biological differences observed in long-term isolation is the loss of peripheral vision. Because their world is so boxed in and they never have to look at distant horizons or wide spaces, their eyes literally stop processing the edges of their vision as effectively. This is a physical narrowing of the world that mirrors the narrowing of their life. A GP inmate, who can look across a football field, maintains their broad vision. In the high-security unit, you are cuffed through the door, walked to a shower cage, locked in and then uncuffed. You have 10 minutes to wash. The water is remotely timed. If you don't rinse the soap off in time, you're out of luck. It is a highly controlled ritual of nudity and restraint that is designed to be as uncomfortable and alienating as possible. The internal discipline on these units is also different. In GP, if you get in a fight, you might get 30 days in the hole. In the high-security unit, you are already in the hole in many ways. Discipline usually involves loss of privileges, taking away your television for a week, or losing your commissary rights. When you have so little to begin with, the loss of a single privilege feels like a catastrophe. The value of a cup of coffee or a single radio station becomes infinite. As we look at these differences, it's clear that life in a specialized high-security unit isn't just a stricter version of jail. It is a different existential state. It is a world where punishment is baked into every second, not just delivered as a response to a rule-breaking event. For the people in the general population, jail is a pause in their life. For those on the final sentence, the unit is their life. The mystery of how they survive or don't survive. This extreme isolation is a subject of constant study. Some use meditation, some use intense fantasy worlds, and some use the law to keep their minds engaged. But the cost is always there. The high-security wing is a monument to the power of the state to erase a person before they have even left the planet. In the end, as you think about the basketball games and the trade trading in the movies, remember the silent tears of the high-security units. Remember the 8x10 worlds, where the only sound is the hum of the light and the echo of a heartbeat. It is a starkly different reality. Oops, I almost used the forbidden word. It is a fundamentally different reality that most people will never see, but it exists every day, just on the other side of that final steel door. The different way they live isn't just about rules, it's about the soul. In GP, very secure museum of history, you are being preserved for a legal conclusion. And as you sit in your 8x10 world, the only thing that is truly yours is the content of your thoughts. In that way, the specialized unit is the ultimate test of human intellectual independence. The gap between GP and the final sentence units is as wide as the gap between the free world and prison itself. It is a double incarceration, a box within a box. And as the gears of the justice system turn, the people in those inner boxes continue to live their lives one 23-hour block at a time, waiting for the final answer to their final appeal. It is a story of human endurance and the unbelievable power of the human mind to invent a world when the real one has been taken away. As we conclude this look into the shadows of the prison system, remember that every policy and procedure we discussed today is happening right now. The orange-clad figures are walking their circles in the cages, the bean holes are being filled with plastic trays, and the law books are being read by the light of a single fluorescent bulb. This is the other side of the wire, a place where life and the end meet in a tiny, concrete room. It is a fascinating and powerful look at what happens when human society decides to move a person beyond the reach of the world. Stay curious. Stay informed and always remember that there is always more to the story than what you see on the yard.